Looking out the window of a moving train somewhere along the Salish Sea, I came to the realization that certain questions were unanswerable. They say there's an image of a ship carved somewhere in the rocks, but I can't find it. Soon all of the vertical lines begin to look like masts. Thousands surround me on all sides. Maybe it's better off I don't find it. Everyone knows what that ship looks like, and it's the beginning of a whole other story. In the comics, the superheroes always have conflicting origin stories and paradoxical pasts. I never took this to be a problem, but a solution. A way of understanding history, which, contrary to popular belief, is not continuous at all, but a series of ruptures and contradictory accounts. He tells me about violent seas and of drowning, finding oneself among killer whale people. You could see their villages reflected along the shore. Which reminds me, one day asked me to tell you the story of how I almost drowned on the west coast of Haida Gwaii. Notes on Nietzsche, briefly. Evidently, all ways of understanding the world are false. Lead takes 3,000 years to dissipate once it enters the soil. Even elements have beginnings, middles, and ends. I once asked a logger who'd spent his entire life cutting down the forest what was more dangerous, a camera or a chainsaw. And do you know what he said? Advertisements are always tragedies disguised as comedies, to suggest the best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. In New Mexico, the tormented cries of dying birds could be heard for miles. I saw a butterfly and almost laughed. It was winter and deathly quiet. I wore a thrift store cowboy hat to protect my skin from the murderous sun. I passed through an Indian reservation with an old Spanish church and the poverty left in the wake of colonization. I meant to write, "There was no gold," but instead I wrote, "There was no God." In the saga of the Swamp Thing number 20, the swamp creature searches for the remains of his archenemy Anton Arcane, believed to have died in a crash during a previous confrontation. Upon discovering Arcane near death, Swamp Thing delivers this monologue. All stories are true stories. year 2000, the atmospheric chemist Paul Crutzen coins the term Anthropocene to define the human-dominated geological epoch we're presently in. A poem can be a political statement that pretends not to be making political statements. This occurs so often, most readers no longer notice this is the case. Prayer is the empty husk of spent poems. God did not utter his name, Dios. He was casting us out forever, adios. In issue 21, Swamp Thing discovers the research conducted by Dr. Jason Woodrue, aka Floronic Man. Woodrue's research, conducted for the benefit of Sunderland Corporation, reveals that Swamp Thing is not actually Alec Holland, the man who died in a chemical fire and jumped into a Louisiana swamp while on fire. The Swamp Thing is actually the displaced consciousness of Alec Holland, a plant that believes himself to be a man. A poem can be an ideological trap. The current rate of extinction for plant and animal species is 1,000 to 10,000 times greater than the natural background rate of 1 to 5 species per year. This is due to human activity disrupting Earth systems. Humans and domestic animals make up 97% of the total biomass of land vertebrates. After the snow, we went for a walk in the neighborhood. Halfway to the tidal creek, we came across a patch of red in the snow. Some bird of prey, or maybe the coyotes killed a creature here. I thought the blood would scare you, but it didn't. On the way back, you slipped and I caught you. We had a good laugh as we jumped across the moat. A week later, those woods were transformed into an empty lot for sale. In 1980, there were 50,000 toxic waste sites in the USA. I visited one with my father on a road trip from Seattle to Montana. The Berkeley Pit is the largest Superfund site in the USA. Cats can't live in this town because the air is so toxic that they lick their fur and die. You caught fireflies at dusk and the stars came out in full bloom. It was July 4, 2018. You were 7 years old. In Swamp Thing number 79, Swamp Thing challenges Superman with this question. The old farmhouse and the adjoining woods were replaced by a storage building complex. Your mom and I lamented the destruction of that house. It was on the edge of town by the industrial farming facilities, but so close to the river and quiet at night. I just spoke with my grandparents over the phone. Grandmother went to see if grandfather was still awake. She said he really wanted to talk to me. He told me he planted a rose bush for me and Anna. He's painting the fence white again. He says he's waiting for me to come visit. I tell him I'll see him in the summer. It's dark out here, snow on the ground, probably 15 degrees. We say goodbye. Neither of us is much of a phone person. After spending the duration of the war in a Nazi coal mine, your Polish great-grandfather came to the U.S. sometime later. His first morning in the States, he woke up in a hotel in New York City, looked out the window, and uttered these words. A poem is a statement, and all statements are political statements. After years of travel and relative uncertainty, I arrive home sometime before midnight. The first thing I notice is the sound the cicadas make at night. The air is cool for summer and the garden desperately needs watering. You could not make up a world such as this. In Swamp Thing number 78, the swamp god becomes female and births himself into the world. A small bird appears along the shore, sticking it into the sand like a tiny hammer. We stop and stare in wonderment, and then you say, "Wait, I think some animals eat sand and take out the nutrients." I look at you and then you say, "Wait, no, that's crabs that do that." The bird continues on its unmarked path. We three turn and do the same. The entire universe unfolds like this.